Number 1. It happened in 4 minutes, under clear skies, over a blue ocean, the 4th of June, 1942, 10:22 a.m. 3 squadrons of American dive bombers arrived over the Japanese carrier fleet simultaneously by accident and destroyed 3 carriers in 6 minutes. Japan's 6-month winning streak ended before noon. Number 2. The Battle of Midway took place 1,300 miles northwest of Hawaii, near Midway Atoll, a tiny coral reef with a lagoon, 2 small islands, and a critical airstrip. The atoll covered only 2.4 square miles, but controlled access to Hawaii and the Central Pacific. Japan wanted it. America had to hold it. Number 3. 6 months earlier, on the 7th of December 1941, Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor with 6 aircraft carriers. 4 of those same carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, would fight at Midway. They were the most experienced carrier force in the world. Their pilots had trained for years and fought across the Pacific. They had never lost. Number 4. Between December 1941 and May 1942, Japan conquered an empire. The Philippines, Malaya, Singapore, the Dutch East Indies, Burma, Wake Island, Guam, and dozens of Pacific islands fell to Japanese forces. Japan controlled resources from India to Alaska. The conquest took 6 months. They seemed unstoppable. Number 5. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, commander of the Japanese Combined Fleet, planned the Midway operation. His goal was to lure the U.S. Pacific Fleet into a decisive battle and destroy it. With America's carriers sunk, Japan could force a negotiated peace. Hawaii might even be invaded. Midway was the bait. Number 6. Yamamoto's plan was complex. He divided his fleet into multiple groups: a carrier strike force, a battleship force, an invasion force for Midway, and a diversionary attack on the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. Over 200 ships and 600 aircraft were committed. It was the largest naval operation in Japanese history. Number 7. The Japanese strike force was commanded by Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo, who had led the Pearl Harbor attack. His first mobile force included 4 fleet carriers: Akagi, his flagship, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu. Together they carried 248 aircraft and were escorted by 2 battleships, 2 heavy cruisers, 1 light cruiser, and 12 destroyers. Number 8. Admiral Chester Nimitz commanded U.S. Pacific Fleet from his headquarters at Pearl Harbor. He had 3 carriers: USS Enterprise, USS Hornet, and USS Yorktown. Enterprise and Hornet were undamaged from earlier battles. Yorktown had been badly damaged at the Battle of the Coral Sea 3 weeks earlier and was supposed to need 3 months of repairs. Number 9. Yorktown was patched up in 48 hours at Pearl Harbor. Welders worked around the clock. Gaping holes in the flight deck were covered with steel plates. The ship was structurally unsound, but she could launch and recover aircraft. Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher took her to sea on May 30 with repair crews still aboard, working as the ship sailed toward Midway. Number 10. Nimitz had a decisive advantage. He knew the Japanese were coming. Station HYPO, the U.S. Navy's cryptanalysis unit at Pearl Harbor, had partially broken the Japanese naval code JN-25. Commander Joseph Rochefort and his team worked 20-hour days decrypting messages, sleeping on cots in the basement of the intelligence building. Number 11. Japanese messages referred to an objective called AF. Rochefort was certain AF meant Midway, but Washington intelligence officers disagreed. To prove it, Nimitz ordered Midway to send an uncoded message reporting that their water distillation plant had broken down. 2 days later, HYPO intercepted a Japanese message stating that AF is short of water. Midway was confirmed. Number 12. Rochefort's team predicted the attack would occur on June 4, northwest of Midway, with 4 carriers. They identified the ships involved and the approximate timing. The intelligence was so detailed that Nimitz could position his carriers in ambush. It was one of the greatest intelligence coups in military history. Number 13. Admiral Nimitz gambled everything. He sent all 3 available carriers, Enterprise, Hornet, and Yorktown, to defend Midway. If he was wrong, or if the Japanese discovered the ambush, the entire Pacific Fleet could be destroyed. America had no other carriers available. There would be no reinforcements. Number 14. Enterprise and Hornet formed Task Force 16, commanded by Rear Admiral Raymond Spruance. Spruance was a cruiser admiral with no carrier experience, chosen because Admiral William Halsey was hospitalized with severe dermatitis. Spruance had never commanded carriers in battle. He would have to learn quickly. Number 15. Yorktown formed Task Force 17 under Rear Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher, who was the senior officer and overall tactical commander. Fletcher had fought at Coral Sea and understood carrier warfare. His ship was damaged but operational. His crew was exhausted but determined. Number 16. The American Pansy. Carriers carried 233 aircraft total, 79 dive bombers, 112 fighters, and 42 torpedo bombers. The Japanese had 248 aircraft, but their pilots had far more training and combat experience. American squadrons had been hastily formed. Many pilots were fresh from flight school. Some had never dropped a torpedo in combat. Number 17. Midway Atoll was reinforced with every aircraft the Navy and Army could scrape together. By June 4, the atoll's garrison included 26 Marine fighters, 29 dive bombers, 4 Army B-26 bombers, 19 Army B-17 bombers, 32 Navy patrol seaplanes, and 6 Navy torpedo bombers. Most were obsolete. The pilots were determined. Number 18. On June 3, a Navy PBY Catalina patrol plane spotted Japanese ships 700 miles west of Midway. It was the invasion force, not the carriers. 9 Army B-17 bombers attacked from high altitude and claimed hits. They missed completely. High-altitude bombing against ships was ineffective, a lesson the Army refused to accept. Number 19. At 4:30 a.m. on June 4, Admiral Nagumo launched 108 aircraft toward Midway, 36 fighters, 36 dive bombers, and 36 level bombers. His orders were to destroy Midway's airfield and defences in preparation for the invasion scheduled for June 7. Half his aircraft remained on the carriers as a reserve strike force, armed with torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs for attacking American ships. Number 20. At 5:34 a.m., a PBY patrol plane radioed. Many planes heading Midway, bearing 320, distance 150. Midway's radar picked them up at 5:53 a.m., 93 miles out. Air raid sirens sounded. Every aircraft on Midway scrambled. Fighters climbed to intercept. Bombers and torpedo planes flew toward the reported position of the Japanese carriers. Number 21. 26 Marine fighters, 21 obsolete F-2A Buffaloes and 5 F-4F Wildcats intercepted the Japanese formation at 6:16 a.m., 30 miles from Midway. They were outnumbered 3-1 by Japanese Zeros, the most advanced fighter in the Pacific. The Marines fought desperately. 15 of the 26 Marine fighters were shot down. Only 2 pilots escaped uninjured. Number 22. Captain Marion Carl shot down 2 Japanese planes before his Wildcat was hit and forced to crash land on Midway. He survived and became one of the top Marine aces of the war with 18.5 kills. Captain Philip White shot down 2 Zeros in his obsolete Buffalo before being shot down and killed. The Marine squadron was decimated, but delayed the Japanese attack by precious minutes. Number 23. The Japanese bombers hit Midway at 6:30 a.m. They destroyed fuel tanks, barracks, the powerhouse, and 1 hangar. The damage was significant but not crippling. The runways remained operational. Anti-aircraft fire was intense. The Japanese lost 11 aircraft. At 7 a.m., strike leader Lieutenant Joichi Tomonaga radioed Nagumo. There is need for a second attack. Number 24. Nagumo faced a dilemma. Half his aircraft were armed for attacking ships. The American carriers, his intelligence claimed, weren't nearby. Tomonaga's message suggested he should rearm those aircraft with land bombs and launch a second strike against Midway. At 7:15 a.m., Nagumo ordered the rearming to begin. Number 25. Aircraft on Japanese carriers were brought up from the hangar deck by elevator, rearmed and refueled on the flight deck, then lowered back into the hangar. The process took time. Torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs were removed from aircraft and replaced with high-explosive land bombs. The removed weapons were stacked on the hangar deck. This violated safety protocols but saved time. Number 26. At 7:28 a.m., a Japanese scout plane radioed. 10 enemy surface ships, bearing 10 degrees, distance 240 miles from Midway. Course 150 degrees, speed over 20 knots. The message stunned Nagumo. American ships were in the area. The scout's next message at 7:45 a.m. confirmed his nightmare. Enemy ships appear to be accompanied by a carrier. Number 27. Nagumo reversed his orders. Stop rearming with land bombs. Rearm with torpedoes and armor-piercing bombs for attacking ships. The flight decks and hangars descended into chaos. Bombs were removed and torpedoes reinstalled. Fuel lines snaked across the deck. Aircraft were being refueled with engines running. The carriers were floating bombs waiting to explode. Number 28. Nagumo faced another problem. His first strike against Midway was returning, low on fuel, some damaged. He had to land them before launching another attack. At 8:37 a.m., he began recovering aircraft. For the next 90 minutes, the Japanese carriers landed planes, refueled them, rearmed them, and prepared for a massive strike against the American fleet. They worked with remarkable efficiency. By 10:20 a.m., all 4 carriers had full strike forces ready to launch. Number 29. American forces had been attacking all morning. At 7:10 a.m., 6 Navy TBF Avenger torpedo bombers from Midway attacked the Japanese carriers. 5 were shot down. 1 survived, so shot up it barely made it back. No hits. At 7:55 a.m., 4 Army B-26 bombers made a low-level torpedo attack. 2 were shot down, no hits. At 8:10 a.m., 16 Marine dive bombers attacked. 8 were shot down, no hits. Number 30. The Marine dive bombers, led by Major Lofton Henderson, pressed home their attacks despite overwhelming fighter opposition. Henderson's plane was hit by anti-aircraft fire and crashed into the sea just short of his target. The Marines continued attacking. Captain Elmer Glidden's bomber was shot down, killing him and his gunner. Only 8 of the 16 bombers returned to Midway. Not a single bomb hit. Number 31. At 8:20 a.m., 15 B-17 bombers attacked from 20,000 feet. They dropped 32 tons of bombs and claimed hits on carriers. They missed completely. High-altitude bombing against maneuvering ships was nearly impossible. The B-17 seconds returned to Midway claiming success. Gun camera footage later proved they hit nothing. The myth persisted for years. Number 32. By 9:30 a.m., American forces had launched over 50 attacks from Midway. All had failed. Not a single bomb or torpedo had struck a Japanese ship. Japanese fighter pilots had shot down over 30 American aircraft. 0 losses among the 4 carriers. The American sacrifice seemed pointless. It wasn't. The attacks delayed the Japanese launch and kept their fighters low, burning fuel. Number 33. The 3 American carriers had launched their strikes between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. Enterprise and Hornet launched at the maximum range, 175 miles, gambling that the Japanese would still be there when the bombers arrived. The gamble meant pilots would have no fuel for a second attempt. They would find the enemy or die trying. Number 34. Hornet's Air Group, 59 aircraft, launched at 8 a.m. under the command of Commander Stanhope Ring. Ring led his formation on a course southwest toward where he thought the Japanese would be. He guessed wrong. The Japanese had turned north. Hornet's dive bombers flew the wrong direction for 90 minutes, saw nothing, and had to return to the carrier. They never saw the enemy. Number 35. Hornet's Torpedo Squadron 8, VT-8, led by Lieutenant Commander John Waldron, disagreed with Ring's course. Waldron believed the Japanese were farther north. He broke away from the formation and led his 15 TBD Devastator torpedo bombers on a more northerly heading. At 9:20 a.m., he found the Japanese fleet exactly where he predicted, number 36. Waldron's squadron attacked alone, with no fighter escort and no dive bombers for support. The TBD Devastator was obsolete, slow, poorly armed, and had to fly low and straight for over a minute to drop its torpedo. Japanese Zeros swarmed the squadron. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky. Every single plane was shot down. 29 of the 30 men in the squadron died. Number 37. Ensign George Gay was the sole survivor of VT-8. His plane was shot down, his gunner killed. Gay survived the crash, inflated his life raft, and hid under it while the battle raged above him. From the water, he watched the entire battle unfold. He was rescued 30 hours later by a PBY patrol plane. His testimony provided crucial details of the battle. Number 38. Enterprise's Torpedo Squadron 6, VT-6, led by Lieutenant Commander Eugene Lindsay, found the Japanese fleet at 9:40 a.m. They attacked without fighter support. 10 of 14 aircraft were shot down. Lindsay's plane was hit, crashed and exploded. He and his crew died. No torpedoes hit. The squadron's sacrifice, like VT-8's, seemed futile. It wasn't. Number 39. Yorktown's Torpedo Squadron 3, VT-3, led by Lieutenant Commander Lance Massey, attacked at 10 a.m. They had 6 F-4F Wildcat fighters as escort, but the Wildcats were quickly overwhelmed by Zeros. 12 of VT-3's 13 aircraft were shot down. Massey died when his plane exploded. Only one pilot, Ensign Albert Ernest, survived, his gunner dead, his plane barely flying. No torpedoes hit. Number 40. In 40 minutes, 3 American torpedo squadrons, 41 aircraft, had attacked the Japanese carriers. 37 were shot down. Only 6 men survived. Not a single torpedo struck a target. The TBD Devastator's combat career effectively ended at Midway. After the battle, the type was withdrawn from service. It was a death trap, number 41. But the torpedo attacks achieved something critical. They pulled all Japanese fighters down to sea level, chasing the lumbering Devastators. The Zeros burned fuel dogfighting and defending the carriers. When the American dive bombers arrived at 10,000 feet, the sky above the Japanese fleet was nearly empty. Number 42. Enterprise's Bombing Squadron 6, VB-6, and Scouting Squadron 6, VS-6, led by Lieutenant Commander Wade McClusky, had been searching for the Japanese fleet for over 90 minutes. They were running low on fuel. McClusky had to decide, return to Enterprise or keep searching. At 9:55 a.m., he spotted a Japanese destroyer below, sailing northeast at high speed. He followed its wake. Number 43. The destroyer was Arashi, which had been depth-charging the U.S. submarine Nautilus. Finished with its attack, Arashi raced northeast to rejoin the carrier fleet. McClusky followed, and at 10:20 a.m. spotted the Japanese carriers. He called for his dive bombers to prepare for attack. 33 SPD Dauntless dive bombers rolled into their dives. Number 44. At 10:22 a.m., Yorktown's Bombing Squadron 3, VB-3, led by Lieutenant Commander Maxwell Leslie, arrived over the Japanese carriers from a different direction. Leslie's 17 dive bombers had launched 90 minutes earlier and flown a direct course. By pure chance, 3 American squadrons, 50 dive bombers total, converged on the Japanese fleet simultaneously from different directions. Number 45. McClusky's Enterprise squadrons attacked Kaga and Akagi. Leslie's Yorktown squadron attacked Soryu. The attacks occurred within 6 minutes. The Japanese carriers were at their most vulnerable. Flight decks packed with fueled and armed aircraft, hangars full of bombs and torpedoes, crews preparing to launch. Number 46. At 10:22 a.m., Lieutenant Richard Best led the first 3 dive bombers down on Akagi. Best's 1,000-pound bomb struck near the elevator amidships. The explosion ignited fuel lines and detonated torpedoes stored in the hangar. A second bomb struck near the stern. Within minutes, Akagi was engulfed in flames. She would burn for 12 hours before being scuttled. Number 47. Kaga was hit by 4 bombs in 2 minutes. The first struck the flight deck, creating a crater and igniting parked aircraft. The second hit near the bridge, killing most of the command staff. The third penetrated to the hangar, exploding among armed aircraft and stacked ordnance. The fourth hit the port side, starting uncontrollable fires. Kaga exploded at 7:25 p.m. and sank. Number 48. Soryu was hit by 3 bombs from Yorktown's dive bombers. All 3 struck within 60 seconds. The first penetrated the flight deck, exploded in the hangar among armed aircraft. The second hit the forward elevator, jamming it. The third struck amidships. Flames spread instantly. At 7:13 p.m, Soryu suffered a massive explosion, broke apart and sank. She burned for 9 hours before going down. Number 49. In 6 minutes, 3 Japanese carriers were doomed. Akagi, Kaga and Soryu, veterans of Pearl Harbor, Darwin, Ceylon and dozens of engagements, were wrecks. Over 100 aircraft were destroyed on their decks and hangars. Hundreds of crewmen were dead or dying. Japan's margin of carrier superiority evaporated in 6 minutes. Number 50. The fourth carrier, Hiryu, was separated from the other 3 by several miles and escaped the initial attack. Captain Tomio Kaku immediately launched a counterstrike. 18 dive bombers and 6 fighters, led by Lieutenant Michio Kobayashi, took off at 10:58 a.m., targeting the American carrier that had been spotted. Number 51. At 12:10 p.m, Hiryu's bombers found Yorktown. 6 F-4F Wildcat. Fighters and intense anti-aircraft fire met them. 13 of the 18 Japanese bombers were shot down, but 3 bombs hit Yorktown. 1 penetrated the flight deck and exploded in the hangar. Another hit amidships, starting fires. The third struck the deck, killing dozens. Yorktown slowed to 6 knots. Her boilers were shut down. She appeared to be sinking. Number 52. Yorktown's damage control teams were among the best in the Navy. They extinguished fires, repaired holes in the flight deck, and restored power. By 2 p.m, Yorktown was making 19 knots and recovering aircraft. Her crew had performed a miracle. The ship seemed saved. Number 53. At 2:30 p.m, Hiryu launched a second strike. 10 torpedo bombers and 6 fighters, led by Lieutenant Joichi Tomonaga, who had led the morning strike on Midway. His aircraft had been damaged in that attack and was leaking fuel. He knew he wouldn't return. He flew anyway. Number 54. At 3:30 p.m, Hiryu's torpedo bombers found Yorktown. They attacked through a wall of anti-aircraft fire. 5 bombers were shot down before releasing torpedoes. Tomonaga's burning aircraft was hit repeatedly but pressed home the attack. He dropped his torpedo and crashed into the sea, killing himself and his crew. Number 55. 2 torpedoes struck Yorktown on the port side. The explosions ruptured fuel tanks and flooded boiler rooms. Yorktown lost all power. She listed 26 degrees. At 3:50 p.m, Captain Elliot Buckmaster ordered abandon ship, fearing she would capsize. 2,270 men went into the water. Destroyers rescued them all. Yorktown remained afloat, listing but stubborn. Number 56. Hiryu's location was reported by scout planes at 2:45 p.m. Enterprise and Hornet immediately prepared strikes. At 3:30 p.m, 24 dive bombers from Enterprise, led by Lieutenant Wilmer Gallagher, found Hiryu 110 miles northwest. They attacked at 5 p.m. Number 57. 4 bombs hit Hiryu in rapid succession. The first struck the flight deck forward, blowing aircraft overboard. The second penetrated to the hangar. The third hit amidships. The fourth struck aft. Hiryu caught fire immediately. Her crew fought the flames for hours, but the fires reached the magazines. At 9 p.m, Captain Kaku ordered abandon ship. Number 58. Admiral Tamon Yamaguchi, commander of Carrier Division 2, chose to go down with Hiryu. He ordered his staff to evacuate, but remained on the bridge with Captain Kaku. At 5:10 a.m. on June 5, Hiryu rolled over and sank, taking Yamaguchi and Kaku with her. Yamaguchi was considered one of Japan's finest admirals. His death was a strategic loss. Number 59. By nightfall on June 4, all 4 Japanese carriers were sunk or sinking. Japan had lost 248 carrier aircraft and most of their experienced pilots. The Americans lost 1 carrier, Yorktown, 1 destroyer, Hammond, torpedoed while assisting Yorktown on June 6, 145 aircraft and 307 men. Japan lost approximately 3,000 men, including many irreplaceable pilots and maintenance crews. Number 60. Admiral Yamamoto, commanding from the battleship Yamato 300 miles away, did not realize the extent of the disaster until late on June 4. He ordered his battleships and cruisers to advance and engage the American fleet in a night surface action. Spruance, fearing a trap, withdrew to the east. Yamamoto's surface fleet found nothing. On June 5, Yamamoto cancelled the operation and ordered a retreat. Number 61. As the Japanese fleet withdrew, American forces pursued. On June 6, dive bombers from Enterprise and Hornet found and attacked the heavy cruisers Mikuma and Mogami. Mikuma was sunk. Mogami was badly damaged but survived. The destroyer Arashi, which had inadvertently led McClusky to the carriers, was also sunk on June 6. Number 62. Yorktown refused to die. After being abandoned on June 4, she remained afloat. On June 5, a salvage party reboarded her. Pumps were rigged. A skeleton crew worked to save the ship. She was taken under tow on June 6. Many believed she could be saved and returned to Pearl Harbor for repairs. Number 63. On June 6 at 1:30 p.m., the Japanese submarine 168, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Yahachi Tanabe, found Yorktown under tow. Tanabe penetrated the destroyer screen and fired 4 torpedoes at point-blank range. 2 hit Yorktown. 1 hit the destroyer Hammond, tied alongside. Hammond broke in half and sank in 4 minutes, killing 80 men. Number 64. Yorktown absorbed the 2 torpedo hits and still remained afloat. Her list increased to 17 degrees. Throughout the night of June 6 to 7, she drifted, listing, flooding, but refusing to sink. At 5 a.m. on June 7, she rolled over and sank. She had survived 2 aerial attacks, 4 bomb hits, 4 torpedo hits, and nearly 3 days of flooding. She went down with colours flying. Number 65. The American victory at Midway was attributed to multiple factors: superior intelligence, Japanese overconfidence, tactical flexibility, luck, and the courage of torpedo bomber crews who died, drawing Japanese fighters away from the dive bombers. All were necessary. Remove any single factor, and the outcome might have reversed. Number 66. Commander Joseph Rochefort, the intelligence officer whose code-breaking made the victory possible, received no public recognition at the time. Inter-service rivalry and jealousy from Washington-based intelligence officers led to his transfer from Pearl Harbor in October 1942. He was not promoted or decorated. In 1986, 30 years after his death, he was posthumously awarded the Distinguished Service Medal, number 67. Admiral Raymond Spruance's decision to withdraw eastward on the night of June 4, rather than pursue the Japanese fleet, was controversial. Aggressive officers criticized him for not finishing off the enemy. But Spruance avoided a night surface battle against superior Japanese battleships and cruisers, a battle the Americans likely would have lost. His caution was wisdom, not cowardice. Number 68. Lieutenant Commander Wade McClusky's decision to continue. Searching past his fuel limit, found the Japanese carriers. His bomber barely made it back to Enterprise, landing on fumes. Had he turned back 10 minutes earlier, the American dive bombers would have missed the carriers entirely. His judgment and determination changed history. He received the Navy Cross, number 69. Lieutenant Richard Best personally bombed 2 Japanese carriers on June 4, Akagi in the morning and Hiryu in the afternoon. He was one of only 4 U.S. pilots to score hits on 2 carriers at Midway. His 1,000-pound bomb on Akagi struck the perfect spot, detonating ordnance and fuel that doomed the ship. Best contracted tuberculosis from inhaling caustic soda from a faulty oxygen system during the battle and never flew combat again. Number 70. Ensign George Gay, the sole survivor of Torpedo Squadron 8, spent 30 hours in the water hiding from Japanese ships and watching the battle. He witnessed the dive bomber attacks that sank 3 carriers. After his rescue, he provided detailed debriefings. He survived the war, returned to Texas, and spoke publicly about Midway until his death in 1994 at age 77, number 71. The sacrifice of the torpedo squadrons was memorialized in films, books, and monuments. Torpedo Squadron 8's attack run, where 29 of 30 men died, became a symbol of courage in the face of overwhelming odds. A memorial to VT-8 stands at Naval Air Station Pensacola. Their names are engraved, a reminder of the price of victory. Number 72. Japanese pilot survivors of the 4 carriers were reassigned to other ships or training units. Many died in subsequent battles as the war turned against Japan. Lieutenant Joichi Tomonaga, who led the Midway strike and sacrificed himself in the torpedo attack on Yorktown, was posthumously promoted. His family received his ashes in an empty box, as his body was never recovered. Number 73. Captain Mitsuo Fuchida, who had led the Pearl Harbor attack, was aboard a Kagi during the battle. He was in the ship's sick bay, recovering from appendicitis surgery when the bombs hit. He suffered broken legs when thrown against a bulkhead during the attack. He was evacuated before the ship sank. He survived the war and later became a Christian missionary. Number 74. Admiral Nagumo survived the battle, rescued from a Kagi before she sank. He transferred his flag to a cruiser and continued in command, though his reputation never recovered. He commanded forces in the Marianas in 1944. When American forces invaded Saipan, Nagumo committed suicide on the 6th of July 1944, rather than be captured. Number 75. Admiral Yamamoto was devastated by the defeat. He had gambled Japan's carrier superiority on a single operation and lost. His health declined. On the 18th of April 1943, American P-38 fighters intercepted and shot down his plane over Bougainville based on decoded intelligence. His death was another consequence of code-breaking. Japan's loss of Yamamoto and the 4 carriers at Midway crippled their naval leadership and capability. Number 76. Japanese casualties included not just ships and aircraft, but irreplaceable veteran pilots and maintenance crews. Japan's pilot training program could not replace them. American training programs, by contrast, rapidly expanded. By 1943, the US was producing thousands of trained pilots per year, while Japan struggled to train hundreds. Number 77. The 4 Japanese carriers sunk at Midway, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, represented half of Japan's fleet carrier force. Japan began the war with 6 fleet carriers. After Midway, they had 2, Shokaku and Zuikaku, both absent from Midway and unable to change the outcome. Japan would build more carriers, but never regained the advantage. Number 78. The United States had 8 fleet carriers under construction in June 1942. By the end of 1943, the Essex-class carriers began entering service, fast, modern, and carrying 90-plus aircraft each. The US built 24 Essex-class carriers during the war. Japan could not match American industrial production. Midway bought time for that production to take effect. Number 79. After Midway, Japan shifted to a defensive strategy, attempting to hold a perimeter from the Aleutians to New Guinea. The Americans took the offensive. Guadalcanal was invaded in August 1942, beginning a grinding island-hopping campaign that would last 3 years and end in Tokyo Bay. Number 80. The Battle of Midway lasted 4 days, but the decisive action occurred in 6 minutes on June 4. In those 6 minutes, the balance of power in the Pacific shifted. Japan would win tactical victories afterward, but never regain strategic momentum. America had time, resources, and now opportunity. Number 81. Midway Atoll itself was never invaded. Japanese plans called for occupation on June 7, but the invasion force withdrew after the carrier battle. Midway remained in American hands for the rest of the war, serving as a forward base for submarines, aircraft and supply operations. Its strategic value was proven by Japan's desperation to capture it. Number 82. The Midway victory was kept partially secret. The U.S. government announced a great victory, but didn't reveal the extent of Japanese losses or the role of code-breaking. A Chicago Tribune article on June 7 came dangerously close to revealing that the U.S. had broken Japanese codes. Japanese intelligence apparently missed the implications and the secret held. Number 83. American newspapers celebrated Midway as revenge for Pearl Harbor. Morale soared. War bond sales increased. Recruitment surged. The nation, demoralized by 6 months of defeats, finally had a victory to celebrate. Hollywood quickly produced documentaries. The Battle of Midway, directed by John Ford, won the 1942 Academy Award for Best Documentary. Number 84. Director John Ford was on Midway during the battle, filming a documentary about the atoll's defense. He filmed the Japanese bombing attack on June 4 from a powerhouse building, continuing to film even as shrapnel wounded him in the arm. His footage captured the reality of combat and was shown in theaters nationwide. It remains some of the only film footage of the actual battle. Number 85. The wreck of Yorktown was discovered in 1998 by a team led by Dr. Robert Ballard, lying 16,650 feet below the surface. The wreck is remarkably intact. Her hull number, CV5, is still visible. The discovery allowed families of lost crew members to pay respects. The wreck is a war grave and protected site. Number 86. The wrecks of the 4 Japanese carriers have never been found. They rest on the ocean floor somewhere in the Pacific, along with the bodies of thousands of sailors and pilots. Japanese families held memorial services for decades without graves to visit. The carriers remain lost, a silent monument to Japan's defeat. Number 87. Dive bomber pilot Norman Dusty Kleiss flew at Midway and scored 3 hits on Japanese ships during the battle, one on Kaga, one on Hiryu, and one on the Seis. Cruiser Mikuma. He was one of the most accurate dive bomber pilots in the Navy. He flew 57 combat missions, survived the war, and lived until 2016, dying at age 100. Number 88. Aviation machinist Mate Bruno Gaido shot down a Japanese bomber attacking Enterprise during the Battle of the Marshall Islands in February 1942. At Midway, he served as a rear gunner in a damaged dive bomber. On June 15, his plane ditched at sea. He and his pilot were captured by the Japanese cruiser Chikuma. They were interrogated, tied to weights and thrown overboard. Gaido was 21. Number 89. The TBD Devastator torpedo bombers used at Midway were obsolete and fatally flawed. They were slow, had short range, and their Mark 13 torpedoes frequently malfunctioned. At Midway, 37 of 41 Devastators were shot down. Despite their obsolescence, their crews flew into battle knowing their chances of survival were minimal. After Midway, the TBD was withdrawn and replaced by the TBF Avenger. Number 90. Japanese torpedoes, by contrast, were the best in the world. The Type 91 aerial torpedo and Type 93 long lance ship torpedo were faster, longer-ranged and more reliable than American torpedoes. American torpedo problems plagued the Navy until 1943. The effectiveness of Japanese torpedoes at Midway, sinking Yorktown and Hammond, contrasted sharply with the failure of American torpedoes to score a single hit. Number 91. The SBD Dauntless dive bomber, which won the battle by sinking 4 carriers, was considered obsolete by 1942. Douglas Aircraft was already designing its replacement. But the Dauntless proved accurate, reliable and tough. Dive bomber pilots loved it. The type remained in service until 1944, sinking more Japanese shipping than any other aircraft. At Midway, it earned its place in history. Number 92. Midway demonstrated the importance of carrier-based aviation. Battleships, the traditional capital ships, played no role in the battle. The Japanese brought 11 battleships to Midway. None fired a shot. The carrier had replaced the battleship as the decisive weapon of naval warfare. Admirals and politicians who failed to understand this lesson doomed their fleets. Number 93. Admiral Spruance later commanded the Fifth Fleet at the Battle of the Philippine Sea and the invasion of Okinawa. He became one of America's greatest admirals. His calm, calculated decision-making at Midway set the pattern for his entire career. He refused flashy gestures in favor of sound tactics. His legacy is victories, not headlines. Number 94. Admiral Fletcher, overall commander at Midway, received less credit than Spruance despite his tactical command. Fletcher fought at Coral Sea and Midway, the two carrier battles that stopped Japan's advance. He was later relieved of command after the Battle of the Eastern Solomons. Post-war historians debated whether he was cautious or competent. The verdict remains mixed, but his role at Midway was crucial. Number 95. Japanese naval doctrine emphasized the decisive battle where one engagement would determine the war. Midway was supposed to be that battle. Japan lost, and their strategy collapsed. They never again sought a decisive engagement. Instead, they fought a grinding defensive campaign they couldn't win. Midway proved that one battle could indeed decide a war, just not the way Japan planned. Number 96. American carrier doctrine evolved from Midway. Concentration of force, multiple carriers operating together, proved decisive. Intelligence support was essential. Fighter direction and radar integration improved. The lessons learned at Midway shaped American carrier operations for the rest of the war, culminating in the overwhelming victories at the Philippine Sea and Leyte Gulf. Number 97. The battle's outcome demonstrated the role of luck in warfare. The timing of the dive bomber attack, arriving when Japanese carriers were most vulnerable, was partially luck. McClusky, following Arashi to the carriers, was luck. The Enterprise and Yorktown squadrons converging simultaneously was luck. Commanders created opportunities for luck. When it arrived, they seized it. Number 98. Veterans of Midway held reunions for decades. Torpedo Squadron 8 survivors, essentially only George Gay, met with dive bomber pilots who had avenged them. Japanese and American veterans eventually met at reconciliation ceremonies. Some shook hands. Others could not. The Battle of Midway Association kept the memory alive until the last veterans passed away. Number 99. The last American survivor of the Battle of Midway, Seaman First Class John Jack Holder, died in 2020 at age 98. He had served on the destroyer Monaghan during the battle. In his final years, he spoke to school children and at memorial events, ensuring that younger generations understood what happened in June 1942 and why it mattered. Number 100. The story of Midway has been told in multiple films. The 1942 documentary by John Ford, the 1976 film Midway starring Charlton Heston, and the 2019 film Midway, directed by Roland Emmerich. Each generation retells the story, ensuring that the battle remains in cultural memory even as the last witnesses pass away. Number 101. Between June 4 and the 7th of June 1942, the U.S. Navy sank 4 Japanese carriers, destroyed 248 aircraft, and killed 3,000 enemy sailors and pilots at the cost of 1 carrier, 1 destroyer, 145 aircraft, and 307 American lives. The battle stopped Japan's expansion, shifted the strategic initiative to America, and began Japan's long retreat across the Pacific. 6 months after Pearl Harbor, 6 minutes of dive bomber attacks changed the course of the Pacific War. The ocean above those sunken carriers is quiet now, but the echoes of that 4-day battle still ripple through history, a reminder that wars are decided not just by ships and planes, but by courage, intelligence, sacrifice, and those rare moments when everything aligns and history pivots on the actions of ordinary men doing from least. Extraordinary things